Every family has a story, but some surnames carry the echo of defiance, ancestors who raised their fists against kings. These were not ordinary people. They were rebels, outlaws, and those who refused to bow. Today, we are uncovering 10 surnames that history branded as traitors or heroes, depending on which side you stood. From the blood-soaked hills of Scotland to the cobblestone streets of colonial Boston, your last name might be the key to a forgotten revolt, one that could rewrite everything you know about your family. Because behind every surname that survives the centuries, there is someone who fought to keep it alive. Some of these rebels changed the course of history, others died in obscurity, their names nearly erased, and some paid the ultimate price for their defiance, leaving behind only a name on a dusty record. But here is the question that matters tonight. Does your surname carry the fire of a rebel ancestor? Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you may never look at your last name the same way again. Wallace, a name that once struck terror into the heart of the English crown and still stirs Scottish pride today. The name comes from the Old English Welsh, meaning foreigner or Briton, but the Wallaces were fiercely Scottish. In 1297, William Wallace led the rebellion at Stirling Bridge, crushing a vastly superior English army. He was a man who refused to kneel, a guardian of Scotland who fought for freedom until his capture in 1305. Wallace's victory was one of the most stunning upsets in medieval warfare, a rebel who became a legend. He sought allies across Europe, proving that rebellion often requires international diplomacy. By the 1700s, Wallaces had crossed the Atlantic, and many fought in the American Revolution, carrying their rebellious spirit to a new world. Wallace was hanged, drawn, and quartered, but his name lived on, immortalized in history and in the hearts of his people. Today, over 50,000 Wallaces live in the United States alone, proof that rebellion does not end, it migrates. So, if your surname is Wallace, you carry the blood of a man who told a king, "I am not your subject, I am your equal." Bruce, a name of Norman origins that became synonymous with Scottish kingship and the ultimate act of rebellion. The Bruces came from Brix, Normandy, but they married into Scottish royalty and claimed the throne itself. In 1306, Robert the Bruce crowned himself King of Scots, an act of high treason against Edward I. He spent years in hiding, fighting a guerrilla war. Then, at Bannockburn in 1314, he crushed the English army. Bruce's use of terrain and infantry tactics changed medieval warfare forever, a rebel who outthought his enemy. He also understood sea power, using ships to control the Scottish Isles and cut off English supply lines. By the Revolutionary War, many Bruces had settled in the Carolinas and Virginia, and they fought for independence with the same ferocity. Bruce's rebellion was brutal, relentless, and deeply personal. He lost brothers, friends, and his own queen to captivity. There are over 40,000 Bruces in the US today, many of them direct descendants of the king who defied England. So, if your surname is Bruce, your ancestors did not just rebel, they won a kingdom, and they handed it down to you. Tyler, a simple occupational name for a roof tiler, but one man turned it into a battle cry for the oppressed. In 1381, Wat Tyler led thousands of peasants in an armed march on London, demanding freedom from feudal bondage. The hated poll tax, 3 groats per head, pushed the poorest Englishmen to the breaking point. Wat Tyler was a veteran of the 100 Years' War. He knew how to fight, and he knew injustice when he saw it. They marched into London, burned the Savoy Palace, and forced the young King Richard II to meet them. The rebels controlled the River Thames, cutting off the king's escape routes, a tactical masterstroke. The rebellious spirit did not die. Many Tylers emigrated to America, and some found themselves on the wrong side of colonial law. Wat Tyler was stabbed by the mayor during a parley. The rebellion collapsed, but his name became a symbol of working-class defiance. Today, nearly 70,000 Tylers live in America, descendants of rebels who refuse to accept their place at the bottom. So if your surname is Tyler, remember, you come from working-class hands that dared to hold kings accountable. Is your surname on this list? Drop it in the comments below. We might feature your surname in the next video. Montfort, a name that once stood at the very heart of English power, until one man used that power to tear the kingdom apart. Simon de Montfort was a French-born earl who became the leader of a baronial rebellion against King Henry III. In 1258, Montfort forced the king to sign the Provisions of Oxford, the first written constitution in English history. He didn't just rebel against the crown, he created a new model of governance, one that included commoners in Parliament. At Lewes, Montfort captured both the king and his son, the first time an English monarch was taken prisoner in battle. His rebellion had international roots. He sought support from the French, his homeland, though it would ultimately betray him. The Montfort name crossed to America with early settlers, and many fought in the Continental Army, carrying forward a legacy of constitutional defiance. At Evesham, Montfort was overwhelmed and killed, but his ideas, representative government and shared power, never died. Today, the name Montfort is rare, but in the pages of English history, it shines as a beacon of principled rebellion. If your surname is Montfort, your ancestors did not just rebel, they tried to remake the very idea of a king's power, and in many ways, they succeeded.
Cromwell, a name that changed the course of British history, and one that still divides opinion to this day. Oliver Cromwell rose from humble gentry to command the new model army, and he did not just defeat the king, he had him executed. In 1649, Cromwell signed the king's death warrant, an act of rebellion that stunned all of Europe. He was a military genius, disciplined, ruthless, and driven by a vision of Puritan righteousness. But his campaigns in Ireland and Scotland were brutal. Rebellion came at a terrible price for the innocent. He understood that rebellion needed sea power to survive. He built a navy that made England a global force. When American colonists rebelled a century later, many Cromwell descendants were among the first to take up arms. They had inherited the spirit. To some, Cromwell was a liberator. To others, a tyrant. That is the double-edged sword of rebellion. It depends on who tells the story. Over 30,000 Cromwells live in the US today, descendants of a man who tore a kingdom apart to build something new. So if your surname is Cromwell, your family walked through fire to challenge the divine right of kings. And for better or worse, they helped shape the modern world. Adams, one of the most common names in America, and one of the most rebellious. The Adams family were not aristocrats. They were brewers, farmers, and lawyers who dared to take on the most powerful empire on earth. John Adams signed the Declaration of Independence. His cousin, Samuel Adams, organized the Boston Tea Party. Rebellion ran in the blood. Samuel was the master of propaganda, the firebrand of the Revolution who stirred ordinary colonists to take extraordinary risks. On December 16, 1773, they turned rebellion into theater, destroying 342 chests of tea in a single act of defiance. The ships that brought the tea carried the seeds of rebellion, and the Adams family was waiting on the dock. After the war, many Adams families pushed westward, carrying their revolutionary spirit into the American wilderness. John Adams believed in the rule of law, but he never shied from conflict. He once said, "Rebellion is the only way for a free people to stay free." Today, Adams is the 39th most common surname in America. Over 250,000 people carry this name of defiance. So if your surname is Adams, you are linked to 2 presidents, countless patriots, and a rebellion that changed the world, all because a few men refused to bow. We are halfway through. Which surname surprised you the most? Tell us in the comments. Hancock, a name as bold as the man who signed his name larger than anyone else on the Declaration. John Hancock was one of the wealthiest merchants in America, a smuggler, a patriot, and a rebel with a fortune to lose. His signature was so large that legend says King George III could read it without his spectacles. It was an act of showmanship and defiance. Hancock used his wealth to fund the revolution. He believed that commerce and freedom were two sides of the same coin. His ships defied British customs, running goods past the Royal Navy. He was a rebel who understood that control of the sea meant control of the colony. When the British seized his ship, Hancock fought back in the courts and then in the streets. He turned a tax dispute into a revolution. After independence, Hancock spread along America's rivers, traders, captains, and explorers who kept their rebellious edge. Hancock never fought on the battlefield, but his ships, his money, and his name were weapons in a war of independence. Today, there are over 60,000 Hancocks in the U.S., many still living near the oceans that brought their family fortune. So if your surname is Hancock, you inherited the signature of a man who refused to be small. In rebellion, as in life, he believed in going big. Ket, an English name rooted in the land, but in 1549, it became a rallying cry for peasants who had had enough. Robert Ket was a farmer, a tanner, who led 16,000 men in an armed protest against enclosure laws that were stealing their common lands. The government branded Ket an outlaw, but to the common people, he was a hero, a man who fought for the right to live on the land. He was no noble and no general, just a farmer who refused to watch his neighbors starve while the gentry fenced off the fields. For weeks, the rebels controlled Norwich, England's second city. They even set up their own government. The king sent warships and foreign mercenaries to crush them. Ket's rebellion was a threat to the very order of Tudor England. Kets who crossed to America carried that deep love of land. They became farmers, homesteaders, and defenders of the soil. Robert Ket was captured, hanged from the walls of Norwich Castle, his body left to rot, but his name lived on. Today, Ket is an uncommon name, a quiet echo of one of England's most forgotten rebellions. So if your surname is Ket, you carry the memory of a farmer who dared to challenge the might of a kingdom and who died for the right of ordinary people to live in dignity. Boone, a name carved into the American frontier, where rebellion was not against a king, but against the untamed wilderness itself. Daniel Boone was a hunter, a scout, and a patriot, but above all, he was a rebel against the limits of civilization. Boone fought in the American Revolution, served in the militia, and lost 2 sons to Native American raids. Rebellion was his life, not a choice. He was a man of the woods who refused to be tamed by British rule or by the expectations of settled society. Boonesboro became a symbol of American expansion and a battleground where the Revolution reached the frontier. Boone's journey was a rebellion against the Atlantic coastline. He believed America's future lay in the vast interior. Life on the frontier was a constant rebellion against weather, against hunger, against the forces that wanted to push back. Boone was captured by the Shawnee multiple times, but he always escaped. Rebellion for him was survival. Today, over 40,000 Boones live in America, the name of a man who went where others feared to tread. So if your surname is Boone, you are descended of a rebellion who did not fight kings. He fought the unknown, and he won. Only one surname left. If you are still watching, drop your last name in the comments right now. Blood, a surname that sounds like violence, and its bearer lived up to the name in the most audacious rebellion of all. Thomas Blood was an Irish-born soldier who turned against the English crown after losing his lands in Cromwell's conquest. In 1671, Blood led a gang into the Tower of London, tied up the keeper, and made off with the crown jewels, the most daring heist in royal history. He was a master of disguise, a double agent who had already attempted to kidnap the Duke of Ormond. Rebellion was his obsession. He got away with the jewels, crushing them with a mallet to steal the stones, but he was caught before he could leave. Many Bloods were transported to America as indentured servants or prisoners. They brought their defiance to the New World. By the time of the American Revolution, Bloods were already established in Virginia and the Carolinas, and they joined the fight without hesitation. Charles II famously pardoned Blood, saying, "He has the spirit of a rebel, and I like that." Even the king respected a good rebellion. Today, the Blood name is rare, but it carries a legacy of audacity that few surnames can match. So if your surname is Blood, you are descended of a man who looked at the most powerful symbols of monarchy and simply took them. Rebellion doesn't get bolder than that. Every surname tells a story. Some are stories of kings, others are stories of rebels who refuse to kneel. Your last name is more than letters on a passport. It's a thread connecting you to ancestors who lived and died for something they believed in. When you say your surname, you are saying their name. You are keeping their rebellion alive. Whether they fought with swords, with words, or with sheer determination, they mattered. They made you possible. But here's the truth. Rebellion doesn't end. It's in the courage to break from tradition, to speak up, and to build a better future. The question is not just, what did my ancestors rebel against? It's, what am I rebelling for? If this journey into the past moved you, please hit that subscribe button and ring the bell. We explore a new surname every week. There are thousands of surnames with untold stories of exiles, outlaws, and survivors. Don't miss the next one. And me? My surname is your surname. It has its own rebel story, but that's for another video. Thanks for watching Surname Secrets. Until next time, keep searching. Your past might just be the spark you need for the future.